The knot in my stomach used to be a permanent resident, a clenched fist deep inside, squeezing the joy out of every breath. For years, I told myself it was stress from work, the demands of global logistics, the always-on pressure of keeping millions of dollars of cargo moving seamlessly across oceans. Now, looking out at the calm, pre-dawn gray of the St. John's River from my small apartment balcony, a place I almost lost, I know the truth. That knot wasn't about work. It was about Serena. And the peace I feel now, that's the feeling of having finally cut her out, root and branch. That knot is gone. They say your late 30s are supposed to be your prime. For me, 41, it was the worst year of my life. My life before her, and even a good chunk of it with her, was simple, comfortable. As a logistics engineer for a major freight company here in Jacksonville, I made a solid $88,000 a year. It wasn't flashy money, but it afforded me this two-bedroom apartment, a reliable 2017 Honda Civic that I kept meticulously maintained, and enough left over to enjoy my fishing weekends and save a bit. I valued precision, predictability, the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly executed plan. My world was orderly, my code was clean, and I liked it that way. Until Serena Vance walked in. I met Serena at a company mixer. She was new, a rising star in executive management, and incredibly charismatic. She laughed at my dry jokes about containerization and global supply chains, looked at me with an intensity that made me feel seen, like my quiet passion for optimizing routes was fascinating, not just nerdy. She was beautiful, sharp, and ambitious. We started dating, and for a while, it felt like the kind of love story you read in books. She'd talk about our future, and for the first time, I started to imagine one beyond my meticulously planned individual existence. The red flags, though, they were there, tiny specks on the radar I blissfully ignored, much like an inexperienced ship captain might dismiss a faint squall warning. Serena had a way of looking at my Honda Civic, not with disdain, but with a kind of pity. She'd say things like, "Honey, you're so brilliant. You deserve so much more than this." Or, after dinner at my favorite unpretentious seafood shack, she'd gently suggest, "Next time, let's try that new place downtown. It's important for us to network, to be seen in the right places." Her right places always involved premium price tags and people she considered influential. She never openly criticized my salary, but her conversations often revolved around her own career trajectory, the lifestyle she envisioned, the legacy she wanted to build. My quiet contentment with a good, stable job and a comfortable life felt increasingly inadequate in her presence. I just thought she was pushing me to be my best self, to reach for more. And I loved her, so I wanted to try. The pressure mounted gradually, like tides eroding a coastline. Serena started pushing hard for us to get a bigger place, a house with curb appeal, something that reflected our potential. My modest savings, which I'd earmarked for retirement, and a new fishing boat one day, suddenly felt like pocket change in her grand schemes. She'd talk about taking trips to Europe, buying designer clothes, hosting lavish dinner parties. My carefully managed budget groaned under the weight of her aspirations. Then came the professional humiliation. My ghost ship algorithm was something I'd poured years into, a proprietary system designed for preemptive cargo rerouting to avoid delays, built on predictive analytics and real-time data. It was my baby, a testament to my belief in reliability and precision. Serena, in her brilliant, charming way, convinced me to integrate it into a high-stakes, multi-million-dollar international contract she was overseeing. "This is our big break, Mac," she'd purr, her hand on my arm. "Imagine what we could achieve together." The algorithm, as always, performed flawlessly. Delays were averted, costs minimized, clients thrilled. But when the time came for presentations to senior leadership or potential new clients, Serena was always at the front. She'd introduce me with a dismissive wave. "And this is Marcus, who handles the technical aspects." Then she'd pivot, taking sole credit, talking about my innovative solutions and my strategic foresight. I'd stand in the back, the silent architect, watching her bask in the glow of my work. At one particular industry gala, a black tie affair I felt utterly out of place at, in a rented tux, she introduced me to a group of her C-suite contacts. "Marcus here is my fiancé," she said, her voice dripping with an almost condescending affection. He's very good with the minutiae, the nuts and bolts. Me? I'm more of the big-picture visionary. One of her friends, a sharp-suited VP from a competing firm, chuckled. Ah, so he keeps the trains running on time while you steer the ship, Serena? She just smiled, a practiced, knowing smirk, and didn't correct him. It wasn't just my job she was subtly mocking. It was my entire identity, my quiet dedication, my very essence. I felt like a glorified prop, a background character in her ambitious drama. My chest tightened, a burning flush rising up my neck. I just wanted to disappear. The gaslighting was subtle at first, like a slow leak in a tire you don't notice until you're riding on the rim. After the ghost ship algorithm's initial success, Serena began to distance herself from its daily operations, delegating to a junior team, while still taking all the credit. Then, the questions started coming to me, innocent at first, from colleagues or her team. Mac, did you really sign off on this routing change? Was this specific compliance check performed as per your protocol? I checked my logs, my notes, my system. Every time, my meticulous record showed I had either done it correctly or I hadn't been involved in the specific deviation they were asking about. When I'd bring these queries to Serena, she'd sigh, Mac, darling, you know how these big contracts are. There are so many moving parts. Are you sure you're not just forgetting something? You've been under so much pressure lately. Then the real nightmare began. A series of minor, then increasingly significant, compliance breaches started cropping up on the contracts managed by Serena, all linked to the very system she had taken sole credit for. The internal audits pointed fingers at my specific logins, my oversight. They were small at first, easily dismissed as human error, but they slowly built into a pattern. I was called into HR. I was accused of gross negligence. My immaculate professional record, my pride, my life's work, it was all being dismantled. Marcus, the HR director said, his voice grave. We have evidence here of systemic lapses under your direct supervision. These are significant, costly breaches. I stared at the printouts, my head spinning. There were forged signatures, manipulated timestamps, deleted data logs that had been partially recovered. It all pointed to me. But I didn't do any of this. I stammered, feeling like I was losing my mind. My protocols are ironclad. My system tracks every input. Serena, who was present at these meetings as the concerned executive, would put a comforting hand on my arm, her eyes wide with what seemed like sympathy. Mac, I know this is hard, she'd say, her voice soft. But perhaps the pressure of the new integration. Maybe you just missed some steps? She made me sound incompetent, a bumbling fool who couldn't handle the very system I'd built. I started to question everything. Was I going crazy? Had I really messed up? My world, built on order and logic, was crumbling. The knot in my stomach turned into a cold, hard stone. The breaking point wasn't a sudden explosion, but a quiet, internal snap. It happened late one night, after I'd been placed on administrative leave, my access restricted. I sat in my apartment, staring at the termination letter, the fabricated evidence, the carefully constructed narrative of my professional failure. Serena had moved out a week prior, citing the stress and needing space, leaving me adrift. I felt the utter emptiness, the profound betrayal, like a physical ache in my chest. I almost gave up, almost just accepted it, let myself be swept away. But then, something clicked. My name is Marcus Holloway. I am a logistics engineer. I build systems. I understand how information flows, how it's stored, how it can be manipulated, and how it can be uncovered. This wasn't just about my job anymore. It was about my professional integrity, my identity. I wasn't a victim. I was a professional who knew his craft better than anyone. I used what I had. My personal laptop still had cached company VPN access logs from before my official suspension. My old work phone had an archived chat history with Serena from when we first discussed the algorithm's integration. My brain, once clouded by doubt and self-blame, sharpened. I started quietly, meticulously, going through everything. My first move was to cross-reference my personal time-stamped emails and texts with the company's officially attributed system changes. There were discrepancies, big ones. Specific code changes, administrative overrides, and compliance reporting submissions that were logged under my user ID but occurred while I was demonstrably offline or even on a scheduled vacation. I dug deeper. The company firewall had a backdoor for urgent, remote administrator access. This access was logged, but the IP address was masked, routed through a complex series of proxies. But the timing was key. I recalled Serena mentioning a new IT consultant she was working with, an external contractor she insisted was top tier for her new projects. I remembered her casual complaint once about him needing specific system access, the kind only you usually have, Mac. I had my own methods. My ghost ship algorithm wasn't just about rerouting cargo. It contained a robust, multi-layered audit trail, a black box of every decision point, every data input, every user interaction. It was designed to be tamper-proof, precisely because I understood the complexities and potential vulnerabilities of global logistics. While Serena and her consultant had deleted user logs and modified database entries, they hadn't been able to erase the underlying, redundant data snapshots and shadow copies embedded deep within the algorithm's framework itself. They had overwritten the surface, but the original ghosts of the data still lingered. It took me weeks, working late into the night, nursing cheap coffee and a burning rage. I used open-source forensic tools, some old coding tricks I'd learned back in college, and my intimate knowledge of the company's specific network architecture. I cross-referenced MAC addresses from network activity, correlated time zone differences, traced login patterns. I found evidence of Serena's direct system access, not under her own executive credentials, but under temporary, elevated permissions created for that IT consultant. And then I found the communications. Encrypted, deleted chat logs between Serena and this consultant, which I later realized was just a burner account she used, discussing making sure Marcus takes the fall and cleaning up the digital footprints. The fabricated compliance breaches, the doctored reports, the manipulated system logs, it was all meticulously orchestrated. It was undeniable. Serena had stolen my algorithm, leveraged its success for her promotion, and then systematically framed me for its manufactured failures. The sheer audacity, the cold calculation, made my blood run cold. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had tried to erase me. The raw, gut-wrenching pain of discovery lasted precisely one night. I spent it staring at the ceiling, every detail of her betrayal replaying in my mind, a toxic loop of lies and manipulations. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of bile, the kind of grief that makes you want to curl up and cease to exist. I cried until my eyes were dry, until my throat was raw, until there was nothing left but a hollow ache. But as the sun began to paint the sky with a pale, indifferent light, something shifted. The emotional collapse gave way to a cold, hard clarity. The victim was gone. What remained was Marcus Holloway, the meticulous engineer, the problem solver. My mind, usually focused on optimizing shipping lanes, now turned its precision to a single, devastating objective: Serena Vance's total professional annihilation. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. It was about justice, delivered with surgical precision, using the very tools she thought she had stolen and weaponized. I knew confronting her, or even the company, immediately, would be a mistake. She had her narrative, her flying monkeys in senior leadership, and I was the disgraced engineer. I needed to let her win, let her climb even higher, before I pulled the rug out from under her. I needed to ensure she had everything to lose. So, I didn't go to HR. I didn't send an anonymous tip. Instead, I carefully packaged all my evidence, encrypted, time-stamped, digitally signed files, and stored them on an external drive, secured with multiple layers of encryption. This was my insurance, my ultimate proof, to be deployed only if absolutely necessary. My real plan was far more elegant, far more in line with my nature. Serena, now basking in her new role as head of international contracts, was managing the company's most prestigious accounts, all reliant on the ghost ship algorithm she now called her own. What she didn't know was that buried deep within the algorithm's legacy code, a relic from my early stress testing days, was a hidden drift protocol. It was a failsafe, designed to subtly test system resilience by introducing almost imperceptible deviations in data interpretation under specific, simulated conditions. It wasn't a bug. It was a feature, a digital canary in the coal mine that would gently nudge cargo off its optimal path, just enough to expose latent weaknesses without causing a full system crash. I had access to the production environment during my last few days, a courtesy for handing over documentation before my termination became official. It was all the opportunity one needed. I discreetly reactivated the drift protocol, setting its triggers to very specific environmental variables that I knew would impact Serena's critical shipments. Minor oceanic current fluctuations, subtle port congestion data, micro changes in predicted weather patterns. These were all things the original, fully functional algorithm would perfectly account for. But with the drift protocol activated, it would subtly misinterpret them, causing fractional, seemingly random reroutes. It wouldn't cause a crash, not even a major delay immediately, but it would initiate a series of seemingly unavoidable deviations that would push delivery times just past contract deadlines. Just enough to incur penalties. Just enough to cause a cascading loss of client faith. It would appear to be legitimate, unavoidable force majeure events, things no one, not even the brilliant Serena Vance, could predict or control. My revenge would be like 1,000 tiny cuts, inflicted by the very system she thought she owned. My termination was swift. I signed the papers, took my severance, and walked out, head held high, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. Serena watched me go from her gleaming office, a smirk of triumph on her face. She thought she had won. She didn't know the ghost was still sailing. Weeks turned into months. I landed on my feet, surprisingly quickly. My reputation might have been tarnished at my old company, but the logistics world is small, and my personal network was strong. A former colleague, someone who always knew how meticulous I was, put me in touch with a private defense contractor looking for someone to develop secure, uncompromisable logistics solutions for high-value assets. It was a perfect fit, challenging and ethical, far away from the cutthroat politics of my old firm. I started earning more, but more importantly, I started feeling valued again for my actual skills, for my integrity. The new job was demanding, but the knots in my stomach were gone, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. Meanwhile, news from my old company started trickling in. Whispers about unprecedented operational challenges under Serena's leadership. Key international clients were expressing frustration, then anger. The force majeure excuses, initially accepted, grew thin. Repeated, inexplicable delays on critical shipments, all under her watch, started eroding client trust. My old company's reputation, once solid, suffered irreparable damage. The cancellations started, one by one, each one $1 million ripple effect from my quiet, precise drift protocol. Serena, the ambitious executive, the rising star, found herself drowning in the very success she had stolen. The company couldn't pinpoint a specific flaw in the ghost ship algorithm itself. It just seemed to be acting unpredictably under her management. They couldn't blame the algorithm, as she had championed it. They could only blame the executive overseeing its deployment. She was demoted, her prestigious contracts stripped away, her once glowing career suddenly stalled, then spiraling. I heard through the grapevine she left the company shortly after, unable to cope with the spectacular failure of her vision. Her professional aspirations, once so grand and consuming, were permanently derailed, crashed on the very digital rocks she thought she commanded. I still drive my Honda Civic, though now it's paid off. I still live in this apartment, but I've made it my own, filled it with things that bring me joy, not things meant to impress. I recently met Sarah, a marine biologist who studies the complex, subtle currents of the ocean. She finds beauty in the unseen forces, in the intricate balance of nature. She laughs at my dry jokes, but she also looks at me with genuine curiosity and respect, not as a prop in her own ambition. She appreciates the quiet hum of a well-oiled machine, and she's fascinated by how I can predict the movement of a ship across an entire ocean. She values character over status, and in her eyes, I see a reflection of myself, whole and at peace. The ghost ship has sailed on. It carried away my naivety, my blind trust, and a piece of my heart, yes. But it also carried away the weight of a betrayal that almost broke me. And in its wake, it left something far more valuable, myself. Intact, wiser, and finally, truly free.